CBS News was not having a good series of reports. They embarrassed themselves in multiple ways. And they wanted to make clear something to all of us, that political violence has no home in our country, except, of course, they had nothing to say when it came to Black Lives Matter Incorporated going about in our country and creating political violence. I want to skip forward to CNN, clip 13. And on CNN, we learned something about GOPers and what they were doing to make the problem worse.
The rhetoric around him over the last few weeks, that if he wins an election, our country will end, our democracy will end, it's the last election we'll ever have. These things have consequences, okay? I don't know what the motivations of the shooter are. I don't know any of the details. But I know the rhetoric around Trump has grown extreme. You mentioned
That's Republican consultant Scott Jennings.
some other violence. You didn't mention the Supreme Court, attempted murder of a Supreme Court justice, or the congressional baseball game where Steve Scalise was nearly murdered. One a conservative, the other a Republican. But we have people in this country who are dedicated to telling half the country that if Donald Trump wins an election, the country will end, the Constitution will go away, and so on and so forth. What I want to hear from all elected officials is this kind of hyperbolic extremism has consequences, and it must end. Yes, we're all shocked, and yes, political violence has no place. Where does it come from? It's got to stop.
But we're also hearing from Trump very, very strong statements of condemnation of Biden, the worst president, the most dangerous president, and all of that. He's speaking very, very strongly against President Biden.
He didn't say that Biden was bought and paid for by Russia, that he's a Russian plant. They haven't made him a felon. They have talked about his business dealings, which are, in fact, utterly, blatantly corrupt, complete with what the young people call receipts. At this time, you have Wolf Blitzer pushing back on this. And it's what? But.
In the hospital.
Well, we do. This is an assassination.
Look, I agree with you.
You say calm things down. I agree both sides should calm things down.
Okay, but we are not seeing both sides making attempts to murder people. Scalise. He mentioned the Supreme Court. We're not seeing Republican or conservative militias seizing control of cities, taking over 6 blocks and being allowed to keep them, committing 2 political murders in there. We're not watching the right have Antifa create and undertake a political murder on the streets of Portland and in Denver. And in case in the one in Denver, there was a prosecution. We're not seeing that, Wolf. We're only seeing it from the left. CBS got back into this, talking again from one perspective.
The biggest threat that officials are telling me tonight is in the form of retaliatory violence.
You're taking me to exactly what I've been underscoring and is frankly very concerning in the rhetoric we are seeing at this hour already. We are seeing some Republican lawmakers come out with statements directly drawing a line between the shooter, whose name we do not know. We do not know if he's a lone actor or was somebody else, but drawing some connection to the government.
Some connection to the government that has spent the last 6 months trying to put Trump in prison, demonstrating that he is a criminal who should not take the Oval Office. Some connection? It's not a tenuous connection. It's not mysterious. And yes, the connection goes to the Mockingbird media as well. MSNBC's Lester Holtz.
Bizarre. Do you think that we will hear a different tone for the rest of this campaign coming from frankly, both sides?
You know what? I would sure hope so. But do you know, and because I think you all covered this before, in 2017, our Republican baseball team was practicing for a spring baseball game as a charity event. And our leader now, Steve Scalise, was, again, a gunman attacked our guys while they were at practice and shooting up the place.
Yeah, I reported that.
I just don't understand this anymore. I really don't understand. The greatest nation in the world right now has succumbed to being a third world country. The level of hate, the level of discourse that takes place has got to stop. It has got to stop, and we've got to return to who we are. We are a great, great nation, and we say in all our prayers, under God, under God, under God. Well, I'm sure that right now, the people of faith, tomorrow on Sunday morning, please go to wherever it is that you worship, drop to your knees tonight and pray for America, pray for President Trump, that he's going to be okay. We also have, as I said, one man was shot. This guy is just there celebrating a day at a farm showgrounds, and all of a sudden somebody takes in their hands. They have to start shooting up the crowd, shoot the president in the head. It's absolutely, it's off the charts. Third world country now. We have to start rallying around about who we are. When 1.5 million men in uniform.
Okay, when in fact our borders are purposely being overrun, and the Department of Homeland Security was in charge of the Secret Service that day, and Mayorkas came out and said he has 100% confidence in the Secret Service, how can you possibly? Mayorkas is part of a corrupt organism. Yes, pray for the country. Yes, pray for President Trump. Yes, if we can stomach it, and sincerely pray for President Biden, the figurehead. Do that, but understand this as well. It is not humans that rescue us. We are told that in the end times, things are going to get funky. That's almost a direct quote from the Bible, right? Good will be called evil, and evil will be called good. This is where we're at. It's our turn to go through this cultural revolution. The way to come out of it unchanged is to lock yourself to the eternal rock of Christ. That's the way to come out of a cultural revolution unchanged. The culture is being changed. It's being assaulted. That's what color revolutions do. We are not the culture. We lock ourselves to Jesus Christ, the rock of our salvation, and that's who we are. We become more and more of him, less and less of the world. We look more and more at things like this as interested, let me say it this way, loving spectators, interested watchers, casual participants, committed with love to our country, but not dependent upon the outcome for who we are. We are dependent upon an eternal outcome. That's hard to do. It's a very difficult mind shift. It's two things at once. Huge concern for your country as an interested observer, a casual participant, when you are diving full in to serving the Lord Jesus as you build the kingdom, because that's where our eternal home is. And that is a difficult thing to do. Yes, vote. Yes, turn out. Yes, as President Trump says, fight within the bounds of Christianity. Yes, do that. And steel yourselves. Put on the full armor of God. The media, of course, wants all of us in MAGA. They call people like us, although I'm not MAGA. I'm not. President Trump, I'm going to vote for him in a heartbeat. Even more now. Even more that he's bloodied Trump, I'm going to vote for him. But I'm not someone who is a MAGA type. I'm not a joiner in that way. But MSNBC had some very, very specific messages for us.
His supporters, though, are using images like the ones we're seeing on the screen, including now both of his sons, pinning those images to their X accounts, the website formerly known as Twitter, pointing out the idea that their father, the Republican nominee in waiting, if you will, is a fighter and kind of seizing on this moment to elevate him politically. And so we have
seizing on this moment to elevate him politically. You mean a moment that was almost one that ended his political career and his life? Yes, you're right. That is a characteristic that we admire about Donald Trump. And I admire it more today than I did yesterday. That instinct to stand up, even if it's adrenaline, even if it's stupid. From a security perspective, it was stupid. I've never been shot in the ear and almost killed with a bullet to the head. Have you? That instinct is why I think God uses Donald John Trump, because that instinct tells us something about what God sees coming for his people. He sees coming a time where blow after blow after blow, we will have to stand. More from MSNBC.
Fearful, or does law enforcement look at the possibility that something like this could inspire others who may have harbored similar thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. The copycat thing here, look, sadly, we've seen it over the last couple of years, haven't we, with people kind of taking on FBI buildings, and it doesn't end well for them, like Cincinnati, Ohio, or a man who tried to swing a weapon at FBI agents in Provo, Utah, who were arresting him. This kind of thing begets more violence and revenge. So if you're going to have protest areas in Milwaukee with presumably people who are anti-Trump, can you imagine people who think in their head the answer is to seek revenge for today's event?
Have you ever seen revenge seeking in a modern era when it comes to assassination attempts? Steve Scalise was nearly assassinated, shot multiple times, just about died. Where were the retaliatory strikes? A Supreme Court justice was nearly assassinated. Number one, that's disappeared from the news. Merrick Garland has done nothing with it. Where were the retaliatory strikes? President Reagan shot. That case by a madman. Against whom would you retaliate? A citizen killed in the open air of Portland, Oregon, murdered right in front of everybody. Retaliatory strikes? A city, 6 blocks of it, Seattle, seized for 6 weeks. 2 people murdered. Street preachers assaulted in plain view of cameras. Where were the retaliatory strikes? Kyle Rittenhouse attacked, nearly murdered, had to defend himself. Portions of Kenosha, Wisconsin burned to the ground. Where were the retaliatory strikes? We could go city by city by city by city and mention this. The fact is this. The media must believe the retaliation's on the way. Otherwise, they run the risk of being on the wrong side of things, emotionally. There are too many questions about this, questions that cannot be answered. No one will ever have a satisfactory explanation for why that roof was left uncovered. At least the woman who heads up the Secret Service has admitted fault. Now she should resign. You think she will? I don't. DC is DC. Father God, I can't, in good conscience, pray for Joe Biden. I can pray that you call him to yourself. I can pray that in full sincerity. I can, with a full heart, thank you for what I think you did in turning President Trump's head to the side. I can thank you. Because if President Trump had been murdered, then everything really would utterly fall apart. Not because he's Trump, but because it would be the last step in the party saying, you can't vote for that person.